Before we begin today's podcast, I want to make a brief announcement about the event I shared with you 2 weeks ago. I had a very successful and fun-filled weekend at the Last Story Standing here in Seattle. I won third place and the People's Choice Award, but more importantly, I faced a challenge, grew through the process, and appreciated the ride I have been on for the last several months. Now, there were times when I asked myself, why are you putting yourself through this? Then I quickly reminded myself that this journey is teaching me so much, and I worked even harder. I may not have won first place, but that's okay. Remember what Maury said in the podcast, A Tuesday Kind of Wisdom? What's wrong with not being first? I got to meet so many wonderful and amazing people, experience some amazing foods, spend time with friends, hear some great stories, and I got to share my story of pride that was forged in the Appalachian Mountains and got to pay tribute to my father. For those who attended, thank you so much. Your presence in the audience or virtually was felt and gave me the support I needed. For those who sent messages or called to say you were thinking of me and praying for me, I appreciate that support as well. You are my village, and I felt your support this weekend. Welcome back to the Acceptance Project podcast. I'm your host, Bryan. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been on a train? Maybe it was a long ride, the kind where you sit back and watch the world pass by. Mountains, rivers, small towns you'll probably never visit, but somehow feel connected to for a moment. Someone else is driving. Your only job is to notice what's moving and what's fading into the distance. Or maybe it was a city train. I used to take the train to work every day, and I would watch people get on and off at each stop. I've always been a people watcher. I'd imagine their stories, where they were headed, who or what was waiting for them when the doors opened. Then the train would stop. They'd leave, the doors would close, and all that remained was the story I pictured in my head. That's what today's episode is about. The people who come into our lives, the ones who step away, and the endings we don't recognize until they've already passed. So, on this cold February day, settle in. Let the noise fade, and for a little while, let's take this train ride together. Have you ever stumbled across an idea that catches you off guard and makes you stop mid-thought? The kind that makes you think, wow, that is so simple, and yet it lands so deeply you can feel it settle in your chest. The kind that makes you wonder how something so obvious managed to hide in plain sight for so long. Well, lately, as I've been trying to create episodes that truly live up to the heart of the Acceptance Project, those moments seem to be finding me everywhere. I'll be driving down the highway, passing by the same billboard I've seen 1,000 times, and suddenly the message looks different. Not because it changed, but because I did. An email comes through, a message on social media, maybe a few words someone else almost scrolls past, and I catch myself thinking, this matters. This is something worth holding on to. This is something worth sharing. That's how the train station theory found me. It didn't announce itself or demand attention. It just arrived quietly at the exact moment I was open enough to see it. And once it did, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Now, before we go any further, I want to take you somewhere else for just a moment. I want to take you back to summer. Now, for all of you who have been battling these unbearably cold temperatures this winter, a trip down memory lane to revisit summer probably feels like a vacation. Let's go back to when days felt endless, when the only clock that mattered was the sun, when you played outside with your cousins or the neighborhood kids until it got too dark to see the baseball flying through the air and someone finally yelled, "Last one," even though it never was. Back to scraped knees, dirty hands, and that deep, tired happiness that only comes from a full day of being young. We didn't know we were building memories. We just thought we were killing time. And then there were the holidays. Living rooms filled with laughter, folding chairs pulled in from the garage, a table that somehow fit everyone, even when it really didn't. We sat shoulder to shoulder with family members, some we loved, some we tolerated, all of them part of the picture. We look back now and wonder how those polyester suits never caught fire, how that one uncle managed to talk with one hand while waving a cigarette around for dramatic effect, punctuating every story like it deserved applause. At the time, it all felt normal, permanent, like it would always be this way. But here's the truth we couldn't see then. We never knew which summer would be the last one we'd spent playing until dusk with our cousins and friends. We never knew which holiday would be the final time everyone gathered in the same room. And we never knew which laugh, which story, which ordinary moment would quietly become a memory we'd one day ache for. Because the train keeps moving. People board, people exit, the doors close, and the train pulls out again. At the time, we don't hear the whistle, we don't mark the moment, we don't say goodbye with any kind of ceremony. We just move on to the next day, assuming there will always be another summer, another holiday, another gathering. So that's the beginning of the train station theory. Life doesn't change all at once. It changes in departures, so subtle we only recognize them in reverse. And many of the relationships that shaped us most were never announced as temporary. They just were. And now, standing here on this platform, we can look back and see it. How family and friends and those early relationships weren't just part of our story. They were preparing us for every relationship that would come next. They taught us how to love, how to belong, how to grieve, and how to let go, even when we didn't realize that's what we were learning. And the train keeps moving. Each train that pulls into the station carries something with it. People, opportunities, roles we once held, seasons we thought would last forever, relationships, jobs, even older versions of ourselves we barely recognize now. You can smell the smoke as it rolls in, hear the metal sigh as it slows, feel the tracks hum beneath your feet. Life doesn't rush these moments, it lets them arrive in their own time. Some trains barely pause, just long enough for a door to open and close, a brief conversation that changes the direction of your thinking, a stranger who says exactly what you needed without knowing it, a class, a summer, a heartbreak that teaches you something about your own strength. By the time you realize how much it mattered, the train is already moving again. Other trains stay longer. They idle at the platform, friends who become family, partners who share your routines and your fears, careers and communities that wrap themselves around your identity until you start to believe this is permanent. You unpack a little. You settle in. You stop watching the clock. And then there are the trains you choose to board, the ones that require courage. You step inside with a clear map, trusting that movement is better than standing still. You don't know exactly where you're headed. You only know that staying on that platform would cost you more than the risk of leaving it. Here's the part most of us struggle to accept. Not every train is meant to be ridden forever. Not every departure means something went wrong. Not every arrival is a gift that will stay. The train station theory reminds us that impermanence is not abandonment. It is design. Some people leave your life not because of failure, but because their ticket was only meant to carry them a few stops. Their purpose was to teach you, to steady you, to challenge you, to reflect something back to you that you needed to see before you could move on. And sometimes you're the train in someone else's story. You arrive with noise and momentum. You matter more than you realize. You leave tracks behind even after you're gone, and then you move on, carrying your own passengers forward. The danger comes when we cling to trains that have already started pulling away, when we run down the platform, arms full of emotional luggage, begging something to stay that has already done what it came to do. In those moments, we miss the quiet arrival happening just behind us. The wisdom is learning how to stand still and wave goodbye with gratitude instead of resentment, to trust the process even when the arrival board looks blank, to believe that the pause is not punishment but preparation. So this left me thinking about how we can understand or maybe better appreciate the wisdom of life that comes with each train arrival and train departure. Here's what I came up with, and I hope these little nuggets of wisdom help you after this train ride today is over. I call them the wisdoms of life. Wisdom 1. Not every train is meant to be ridden forever. Some trains are only meant to take you a few stops. They arrive loud and full of promise. You grab a seat, you settle in, you think this might be it. But then, without warning, the brakes sigh, the doors slide open, and suddenly the ride you thought was permanent asks you to stand. Maybe a friendship changes, a relationship ends, a job no longer fits. Maybe a version of you quietly steps off. This is where we often struggle. We mistake the ending for failure. We replay the ride. We wonder what we did wrong. But the truth is, some trains are designed to teach, not to stay. What if the length of the ride was never the measure of its value? What if the lesson was always enough? Acceptance means thanking the train for where it took you, even if it did not take you all the way. Think about Oprah early in her career. She landed what many people would have called the job: television anchor position, visibility, stability, the kind of seat you grip tightly and think, this is it, I've arrived. But the ride didn't feel right. She was told she was too emotional, too soft, not cut out for the role she had worked so hard to earn. And then the brakes sighed, the doors opened, she was let go. From the outside, it looked like failure, a derailment, a moment you replay at 3 a.m, wondering what you should have done differently. But that train was never meant to take her all the way. That job taught her how to speak to people, not at them. It taught her empathy, presence, and how to sit with someone else's truth without flinching. It taught her the very skills that later made her voice unmistakable and her impact undeniable. If she had stayed seated on that first train, the one that didn't fit, the world never would have heard the version of Oprah who changed millions of lives. Are you listening to what each train is whispering to you as it moves along the track? And are you enjoying the ride and the scenery? Are you truly taking in the lessons and life's wisdom, or just staring out the window? Wisdom 2 teaches us that every departure creates space for a new arrival. A train pulling away feels like a loss. The platform grows quieter. The air feels thinner. You notice the empty space beside you where someone used to stand. But train stations are not built for people to remain standing in one place forever. They're built for movement. When one train leaves, the schedule does not stop. Somewhere down the track, another set of lights are already approaching. Another opportunity, another relationship, maybe another chapter you cannot yet imagine. What if the empty space you feel is not absence, but preparation? What if your heart is being cleared, not abandoned? Acceptance is trusting that the platform is not empty, it is simply waiting. Very few people have understood that sound of silence better than Abraham Lincoln. His life was a long station filled with departures. As a young man, trains of possibility arrived with promise. The law, politics, purpose. He stepped aboard with hope, believing each one might finally be the ride that carried him home. But again and again, the brakes sighed, elections were lost, careers stalled, public ridicule echoed louder than applause. Then came the deepest losses, the trains that leave you standing in silence. Lincoln buried his mother early in life. Later, he lost his first true love, Anne Rutledge. This contributed to a period of profound grief and emotional collapse that friends later described as one of the darkest seasons of his life. And while leading a nation torn apart by war, he watched a train no parent should ever see depart. The loss of his son, Willie. The platform grew unbearably quiet. The air thinned, and history remembers his leadership, but grief remembers the empty space beside him. It would have been understandable if he sat down on that platform and stayed there. But train stations are not built for stillness. Even in his sorrow, life kept moving. Somewhere down the track, another set of lights approached. Not joy in the way he once knew it, but resolve, compassion, a deeper understanding of suffering. Those losses carved out room in his heart for empathy. They shaped a leader who could speak to a broken nation because he himself was broken and still standing. What if the empty space beside him was not abandonment, but preparation? The heartache did not mean his journey was over. It meant it was changing. The trains that left him behind did not erase his purpose, they refined it. Acceptance in Lincoln's life was never about denying pain. It was about trusting that the platform was not empty even when it felt unbearable. It was about believing that movement would return, that meaning would arrive again, even if it came quietly. And maybe that's the invitation for us. When a train pulls away and leaves your platform echoing, what if your heart is not being emptied but cleared? What if the waiting is not punishment but becoming? Wisdom 3. You are allowed to step off, even if others stay on. Now this is the hardest one. Sometimes the train is still moving. Everyone else looks comfortable. They seem content to stay seated, and yet something in you knows this stop is yours. You feel it in your chest, in the quiet knowing that says, if I stay, I will shrink. Stepping off takes courage. It means disappointing people. It means leaving familiarity. It means standing alone on a platform while the train pulls away without you. What if honoring your own stop is not selfish but necessary? What if staying would cost you more than leaving ever could? Acceptance means choosing yourself without bitterness, stepping onto the platform not as someone left behind, but as someone arriving. Now, this wisdom is perfectly illustrated by the hard decision that Princess Diana reached in her life. From the outside, she was on the most admired train in the world. Royal titles, palaces, applause wherever she went. People assumed comfort meant happiness, that staying seated was the obvious choice. But inside, she was shrinking. She loved deeply. She wanted connection, warmth, to be seen as a human being and not just as a symbol. And slowly, painfully, she realized that remaining on that train would cost her something she could never get back: her voice, her spirit, even herself. Stepping off was not dramatic in the way movies show it. It was quiet, heavy, lonely. It meant disappointing millions. It meant being judged. It also meant losing the life she thought she was supposed to want. And yes, it meant losing someone she once loved. But she stepped off anyway. She stood on that platform while the train continued without her, knowing the world would keep moving and she would be standing still for a while. That pause was not weakness, it was courage. Because honoring your own stop is not selfish, it is survival. Afterward, something remarkable happened. On that platform, she became more fully herself. She used her voice. She connected with people who felt invisible. She touched hands no one else would touch. She became more than a role. She became real. So as this train begins to slow, and if this episode does anything, I hope it gives you permission to trust your stop. Not every season asks you to endure. Some seasons ask you to arrive, and arrival does not always look loud or triumphant. Sometimes it looks like standing alone on a quiet platform, heart steady, knowing you chose growth over comfort. Take a breath right here. You're not behind. You're not wrong for changing. You are living, and living means movement. It means accepting that every ride, every goodbye, every brave step off the train is shaping a wiser, more honest version of you. That is not failure, that is becoming. If this episode resonated, if it stirred memory, softened a loss, or reminded you that the train of life keeps moving and that movement is what it means to live, consider sharing it with someone who might need that reminder right now. We all know someone standing quietly on a platform, wondering if the next train will ever come. You can help them hear the whistle. Liking this episode, sharing it, or leaving a review may feel like a small gesture, but it is how this conversation keeps traveling. It is how these stories reach people who are still learning how to wave goodbye, how to step on, or how to trust the pause in between. Every share is another seat filled. Every review is another signal that the message matters. And together, we keep this train moving forward. Thank you for being part of this journey, for riding along, and for helping the Acceptance Project reach hearts that are still waiting for their next stop. So as we close, I want to leave you with this. Listen to the lessons you are learning right now, not just the loud ones that demand attention, but the quiet ones that tap you on the shoulder and wait patiently to be noticed. Pay attention to who is riding beside you in this season. The friends, the partners, the co-workers, the strangers with whom you briefly share a seat and somehow leave a mark. Appreciate them fully while they are here. Say the things you would regret leaving unsaid. Let yourself be present for the ride, even when you know it will not last forever. And when a train pulls away, when someone you love steps off, allow yourself to feel the ache without turning it into blame or failure. Sometimes a departure is not a loss, but a graduation. It means the lesson was learned, the chapter was written, the purpose was fulfilled. There is no rule that says endings have to be tragic to be meaningful. Some deserve gratitude. Some deserve quiet celebration. Some deserve a soft smile and a wave as the train disappears down the track. Life is not asking you to cling tighter. It is asking you to trust deeper, to believe that movement does not erase what mattered. It carries it forward in a different form. So, if today you find yourself standing on a platform, heart a little tender, hands empty where something once rested, remember this: the station is still alive, the schedule is still moving, and you are not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. Just remember, every train changes you, every stop shapes you, and every departure is making room for who you are becoming. So, until next time, take care of yourself and take care of those around you. The Acceptance Project podcast is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its contents are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Bryan Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you're seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.